Let's call this meeting to order. Next best thing to a gavel. This is a meeting of the Policy Committee of the Bloomington, Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organization. Can we please have a call of the roll?
Recording in progress.
I'll repeat myself. This meeting will come to order. This is a meeting of the Policy Committee of the Bloomington, Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organization. Can we please have a calling of the roll?
Oh, microphone's on. Okay. Jason Bannock. Here. Nate Nickel. Here. Margaret Clemens. Here. Kate, I'm sorry, I'm not used to seeing anybody in person. Kate, please. Here. Andrew. Here. Steve.
We have full name, Steve Olin here.
Sorry.
Public meeting.
This is version 0.5, like I said. Pam Samples.
Here.
Julie Thomas.
Here.
Sarah Ryderband.
Here.
Anybody? Oh, and then remotely, Jillian.
Yes, here.
Okay, and Chris.
Here.
That's Jillian Kinsey and Chris
Doug.
Wellman.
Oh,
Is that right?
Doug.
Wellman?
Doug, are you out there too?
Could
Doug-
we have an identification of anybody who's acting as a proxy?
Doug Horn's out there also.
Yes, here.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, we
That's it.
have a quorum. Thank you. Mr. Martin,
Can we identify anyone acting as a proxy, please?
I'm sorry.
You'll call the roll.
Public Works Director, Nate Nickel.
I'm Andrew Seabour, serving as proxy for Mayor Hamilton.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's go briefly over the agenda. We'll first approve the agenda, approve minutes. We'll hear communications from the chair. We'll hear reports from officers and committees, reports from the MPO staff. There is no old business today. Under new business, we'll be hearing the Monroe County Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan update, the BMC MPO draft fiscal year 2023-2024 Unified Planning Work Program, and the fiscal years 2020 through 2024 Transportation Improvement Plan Amendment, fiscal years 2022-2026 TIP Amendment. We will hear public comment on matters not included on the agenda, communications from committee members on matters not included on the agenda. We will review upcoming meetings in our schedule, and then we will adjourn.
I move approval of agenda.
We have a motion for approval of the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We are in person, so I think we can have a voice vote if there's no objection. All in favor of approval of the agenda, please signify by saying.
Because we have members that are not present, it is mandatory that it is a roll call vote for all votes.
The state comes back to us again. All right, can we have a call of the roll on the approval of the agenda? Darn it.
All right, yep. Ryderband,
Yes.
Samples. Yes. Thomas,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Bannock. Yes. Nickel. Yes. Clements. Yes. Wiltz.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes.
Seabour.
Yes.
Volan.
Yes.
Wallman.
Yes.
The agenda is approved. We now move to approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes from the last meeting of February 11th, 2022.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote on approval of the minutes?
Samples.
Abstain. I wasn't here.
Thomas.
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
Bannock. Yes. Nickel. Yes. Clements. Yes. Wiltz.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes.
Seabour.
Yes.
Volan.
Yes.
Wallman.
Yes.
Ryder Band.
Yes.
The minutes for the February meeting are approved. We move now to communications from the chair. Just want to say briefly that I am pleased to see everyone in person here in council chambers since the executive order that's been in place for the past 2 years has been removed. We are still finding our way, but this is the first hybrid meeting of the MPO. Pleased to welcome 3 members of our august body attending the meeting remotely. And it sounds like the sound and video here is working as we had hoped. So maybe someday we'll be able to actually have voice votes even with remote attendees. So other than that, it was a pleasure to meet with Mr. Martin and Mr. Clemens last week to plan for the year's MPO agenda overall. There's a lot of complicated stuff we have to deal with this year. We're going to see some of it today, but I am looking forward to working through it all with you all. With that, we'll move to reports from officers and/or committees. Is there a report from the Technical Advisory Committee?
No report.
No report from the TAC. Is there a report from the Citizens Advisory Committee?
Yes, CAC met, and we recommended acceptance of the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan update, as well as a recommendation to approve the UPWP and the TIP amendment for 2022-2026, both of which we will be looking at today.
Very good. Any questions for the Citizens Advisory Committee? Seeing none, we'll move to reports from MPO staff. Mr. Martin, Mr. Clemens?
Yes. At the request of members of the Policy Committee, we've included in the packet correspondence from the staff to the Indiana Department of Transportation and also correspondence from the Monroe County Commissioners to the Indiana Department of Transportation. That's all I have to report on that.
Any questions for staff? Ms. Ryderband?
Yeah, I'm wondering if either the county or our staff has received a response from INDOT?
Staff has not heard any response. I mean, the request was that any response be directed to the Monroe County Commissioners, not the staff.
Board of Commissioners has not received any information back yet from INDOT, and we're following up with them.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Ms. Clemens? Does staff care to respond?
Well, staffers requested to make requests for study. We made the request for the study through the INDOT for you. We didn't prepare a letter because it was unclear at that time after that meeting. That was in January? Yeah, that was January. It was unclear after that meeting what areas wanted to be studied, what areas wanted to be examined. We knew it was 2 corridors, but we didn't know where to where. And then that came out later in a what I would call the written form from the county commissioners. So the county commissioners' letter gave much greater specificity than what the staff had available at the time of the meeting. When was that? Second Friday in January.
Ms. Clemens? Any other questions or response from staff? Mr. Clemens?
I believe we have a response from staff member Rosenbarger.
that you just received? Is that something you'd like to share with us?
She has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't. Is Ms. Rosenbarger
Hi.
attending the meeting? Can we have the view changed from us to those people who are attending?
I think that's a CATS thing. We'll see if they can do it.
Yeah, if we could ask Katz to switch the view on the video so that we can see the faces of people who are attending the meeting remotely, that would help us a lot. There we go. I see Ms. Rosenbarger, staff of the city. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I do not have a response. I wanted to ask a technical thing. I don't think you all have seen this chat. While the people listening on Zoom, it's using the audio from CATS, so your microphone has to be turned on in order for us to hear you. So maybe I would just ask if people, or if the chair can you have been stating names when you call on somebody, and then if anyone is speaking, make sure that the green light on your microphone is on. So I don't think it matters in the room, but we could not hear what Ms. Clemens asked.
All right. Ms.
Thanks.
Clemens, because you were unable to be heard, could you restate your concern for those who are listening?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to note that the outstanding request by member Kate Wiltz was to compare the two letters submitted to NDOT requesting the transportation study, the one submitted by staff and the one submitted by the commissioners, in order to get to the bottom of the non-responsiveness of staff to policy committee members' requests. And Ms. Wiltz had requested that the two letters be included in our packet today for review and discussion. And instead of the letter that had been previously supplied by, that showed the staff request, which was some of us found derogatory toward us, a mere memo is included. So I want to point that out for the record and to request that the council member Kate Wilt's request be fulfilled. It's outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Question to staff. Is the letter in question that was not included in the minutes available to be circulated now, by any chance? Can it be forwarded to us? And if not now, in a few minutes?
I'm sorry, we missed that up
Is
here.
the letter that Ms. Clements refers to, the letter from Commissioner Wiltz, or from Councilmember Wiltz, is it available easily to be forwarded to MPO members at this moment?
It
Do
should
you have
be,
it handy?
but that is not the letter that I believe was spoken about. The letter was specifically coming from the staff and
From
not
Mr.
one-
Pat Martin to NDOT.
Okay, so just to be
Right.
clear, staff wrote a letter to NDOT. No? Councilmember Wiltz, to whom did you address the letter, Councilmember Wiltz?
No, she did not write a letter. Sorry.
You referred to her, so who did write the letter?
Mr. Patrick Martin wrote a letter on behalf of staff to NDOT in almost a derogatory way
Okay.
about our request for a traffic study
What I'm asking is, you referred to a second letter that was not
that the
included.
commissioners wrote that is included in the packet.
Okay, so you said,
Councilmember Wiltz asked that this packet today include both letters so that we could get to the bottom of the non-responsiveness of staff to policy member requests.
okay, so the letter that the commissioners wrote, is it in the packet?
Yes.
So what are you saying, Ms. Clements?
Mr. Martin's letter that he had previously submitted to NDOT is not in the packet. The one,
It is.
Is that letter,
It is. It's on here. It's called case study number 0307380 to NDOT for you, submitted to NDOT for you on January 25th.
and it's in the packet?
that's not the
It's in
same
the
letter.
packet, yeah. It says,
All
"Dear
right.
NDOT, for you, members of the BMC MPO Policy Committee hereby request a
That's not the
study
same
of the
letter.
Indiana State Road 45 corridor from the State Road 45 bypass to Smith Road, and a study of the Indiana State Road 46 corridor from 3rd Street, College Avenue Mall intersection to State Road 446. Please feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions. Thanks, Pat Martin. Bloomington
That's
NPO.
plenty. Roughly how far into the packet is it? Halfway through, near
Right
the
before
bottom?
right before the commissioner's letter.
Okay. Does that satisfy Ms. Clement's immediate concern?
No, that is not the same letter that was presented before.
Okay, well,
That caused the request for the review
Let
and the
me-
comparison.
let me just say that it's, without stopping the meeting and delaying any further, it's going to be difficult to resolve this concern right now, so.
I move we continue it to our next meeting, this discussion, this outstanding item of discussion then.
Well, this item is simply, we just got a report from MPO staff. I can simply direct them to ensure that letter is in their next report and in the, but I'm going to need clarity from you all because I don't have the letters in front of me and I don't know the difference between the 2 or 3 in question. But there's no, I'm happy to put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Are there any other matters from staff in their report?
None.
All right, thank you. We have no old business today. We will move directly to new business. And I'll note that this first item is an item that should have an asterisk in the agenda because it needs to be voted on. The Monroe County Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan update. Would staff like to present?
Yes, please.
Please do.
Okay. Human Services Coordinated Transportation Plan is a requirement from the Federal Transit Administration. The Bloomington, Monroe County MPO had a plan, but the plan was dated 2012. The Indiana Department of Transportation Public Transportation section requested that the staff complete an update of that study, and they also offered the services of a consultant to complete this study. The consultant was RLS and Associates, I believe out of Dayton, Ohio. The study was initiated in January, February of last calendar year. We conducted public meetings, series of public meetings, conducted a public survey, which this board, this committee and other committees were a part of. They also committed a series of focus group meetings and developed a draft plan. The draft plan was finally issued in a final form in October of last calendar year. The plan went before the Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee, both of which recommended adoption by the Policy Committee. The staff included in here as an addendum a 3-page memorandum, so that way nobody has to read the 65-page report. What we did was we took the consultant's words, put them in there in the form of a background, in form of study approach, and then the implementation plan with the recommended goals. This plan was designed to examine gaps in transportation service for senior citizens or elderly and individuals with disability, and it involved predominantly rural transit and Bloomington transit because there are no other service providers at present who receive Federal Transit Administration funding for services. I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Are there questions for staff about the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan update? Ms. Reiterban.
Yes, thank you. So I'm curious, I hear adoption, which is what we did in the CAC, but is it about acceptance of this document? Is this truly an adoption of this document? In which case, if there's an adoption of this document with total gratitude for the bullet point goals, how is this document actually utilized by this body? What part does this policy committee have in helping to implement those particular goals?
The implementation goals have responsible parties, and the responsible parties would be Rural Transit and Bloomington Transit, for ensuring that those goals are fulfilled. And then the timeframes that are put in here are also identified. The costs for implementing these are what I would call nominal. I mean, it includes, includes travel training, mobility management on how to use existing transportation options. In other words, public service announcements and/or other materials such as that. The next one is expansion of service, enhanced service in the fringe area outside of the Bloomington city limits. That would be the responsibility of rural transit, because Bloomington Transit is limited by statute, by state statute, to operate only as a PTC. They're limited only to operate within the city's municipal boundaries. And then the third goal, improve pedestrian and wheelchair access to bus stops and add stop amenities. Bloomington Transit already has that underway. In fact, they've had it underway for over a year, I believe, right now. That was a separate study which staff did 2 years ago. We did that. And then the fourth goal, increase participation in initiatives to enhance mobility. In other words, to be involved in the Indiana Council on Specialized Transportation. Bloomington Transit should already be a part of that, and Rural Transit should already be a part of that also, and other statewide organizations. So I would call them relatively low-hanging fruit type of goals that should be a low cost, no cost to both transportation entities.
So what that means in terms of this body is where funding may go. So it's more of an informational piece for us to understand what the use of those funds and why it's important. Is that correct? Aside from being regulatory,
Yeah.
that we must complete this, and so there's also an element of gratitude that this is done and we can check it off. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would look at this as a policy document, a policy guidance document. I mean, Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan is almost at a 40,000-foot level because it's a statewide requirement, national and a statewide requirement. The state of Indiana has gone through all of the urbanized areas, making sure that every MPO has updated their Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan, because all of them were of a certain age, 10 years old or older in some cases. So they assisted by making the offer for consultant services, which we took because the cost was free, which we definitely took. And the consultant selected on the statewide basis also was extremely familiar with the Bloomington area, having lived here and having gone to college here and worked here too for that time. So yeah, I mean, you start out at federal mandate requirement, state mandate requirement. We have the plan before us. It went through the entire process. It met all of the requirements which Department of Transportation and Federal Transit Administration wanted. So now this adoption here by this committee would simply would reflect what I would call a policy position for making sure that there are no service gaps between the two service providers of Rural Transit and Bloomington Transit. In other words, nobody's falling through the cracks. I hope that answers your question.
More than answers it, thank you.
Long way, yeah.
Thank you. Further questions for staff? Mr. Seabour.
I guess just following up on that question, as I skim the document, appreciated in the presentation highlighting like who would be responsible, but in the actual draft document, there's a few instances where it lists responsible parties and it's highlighted without actually listing the responsible parties. And I just, in my role specifically, I want to know if there's things I'm responsible for, and I guess, wanting to highlight that, and what is the plan for closing that gap?
And those highlights were mine. I want to make sure of that. I mean, the consultant gave us the final draft in October without the highlights, and I made the highlights. And then we will be working with Rural Transit and Bloomington Transit to make sure who will be responsible for what objective, fulfilling what objective, and then we will actually put that in as the last item. But the first thing we had to do was have the committee adopt this as a policy document, and then we would identify the responsible parties for that, and then that goes to the Indiana Department of Transportation, Public Transportation Division. Does that answer your question?
So we are, I guess, are we voting on approving this draft document with these items not being identified?
You can, or you can identify them today, for that matter. Or we can report back to you on our consultation with Rural Transit and Bloomington Transit. I mean, in the cases where those are highlighted, it will be both entities.
Okay. I think if possible, I don't know what the deadlines for having this approved. I would appreciate if there could maybe be some additional coordination with those agencies and coming back with those filled out, but that's just me.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. We can bring back to you next month with those parties identified in that. Yeah.
To follow up on Mr. Seabor's question, thank you. Do we have a drop dead date for this document?
Well, they indicated this month, but that's okay. We can do that next month.
Well, if it'll provide clarity.
I mean, yeah, it does provide, yeah, we need to provide the clarity, I agree.
Further questions for staff on this item? All right, well.
Mr. Chair, do we need to then vote to postpone this item until the next meeting?
That would be in order, that's correct.
I so move.
We have a motion and a second to postpone this item to the April meeting. Could we have a roll call vote, please, on the motion? Unless there's discussion.
Do we need public comment on this?
Yes, we do.
All right. Is there public comment on the motion to postpone? Actually, I don't think motions to postpone have public comment. It's only when you're talking about the item itself. No. We're going to go straight to a roll call vote.
All right. Thomas.
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
Bannock.
Yes.
Nickel. Clements.
Yes.
Wiltz.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes.
Seaborg.
Yes.
Volan.
Yes.
Wallman.
Yes.
Ryderband.
Yes.
Samples.
That vote is unanimous. We will postpone the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan update to the April meeting. Let's move now to the BMC MPO Draft Fiscal Year 2023-2024 Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP. Mr. Martin or Mr. Clements, who's presenting?
Sure, just let me get to it.
One moment, we're scrolling
I'm trying to
down.
get to it myself. Are there bookmarks in this PDF file?
There will be next month.
Okay. Thank you for that.
All right, the MPO Draft Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, as many of you should know, is the MPO's budget, and this one is for upcoming fiscal years, both 23 and 24. The new things within this budget, as we'll get to a little further down, is that to answer probably what some questions are out there is, how did this change since last time? And the big answer is it's only an increase in, what, $2,000 from fiscal year 2022. And we'll be going through most of the budget here in a little bit. But to show what this budget is planning for is, well, I'll just go into our planning emphasis areas. Oh, did I pass it already?
Yeah.
I sure did.
Scroll back down. There you go.
Okay, our planning emphasis areas are, are you sure? No, right, hold on. There we go.
There you go.
Sorry, our planning emphasis areas are areas that we're supposed to plan for and account for, given directly to us from the Federal Highway Administration and a Federal Transit Administration. And each year, there are new planning emphasis areas. So areas that we are supposed to, as an MPO, work on this year include tackling the climate crisis, equity and justice 40 in transportation planning, get to that in a second, complete streets, public involvement, strategic highway network, and the U.S. Department of Defense highways, the Federal Land Management Agency coordination, planning and environmental linkages, data and transportation planning, TIP-STIP review process, and the metropolitan planning area and urban area boundaries. So first of all, tackling the climate crisis, and actually several of these are already within our work program, our Metropolitan Transportation Plan that we passed as an MPO about a year and a half or so ago now, as well as our complete streets policy will be needing updated. But I wanted to back up to this Equity and Justice 40 initiative. What this really means is that we are to strive to have 40% of our transportation planning dollars focused on justice areas as outlined in our MTP. And we have a map of that, as well as there was a map of that in the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan too. So really, to kind of boil this initiative down is just to try to plan for transportation dollars to be spent in these kind of disadvantaged communities. Okay, complete streets policy. We will be addressing this later in the year, probably in September and October. Our public involvement plan, as we will see maybe again next month or in May, we'll be updating this. The strategic highway network, we don't really have any of these areas within our planning boundaries. So as far as I know, we don't have to really do a whole lot in this area, but these are, once again, planning areas for the entire country. So they may not all affect each MPO. Let's see, Federal Land Management Agency, I believe about the same thing with that, right? As well as planning and environmental linkages. We don't really have too much to focus on in there. Data and transportation planning. We have a lot of new data with, for instance, crash report data, and we'll see in some of these elements are planning elements. Freight, bicycle, pedestrian planning, equity, performance management, crashes, safety, that kind of thing will be addressed through our planning elements 201, 202, 502, 503, and 504, which are pretty much all the 500 levels is bicycle, pedestrian, and transit. Okay, TIP and STIP review. We're currently undergoing that right now. From our level, the ball is essentially in INDOT's court, and we are hoping to hear back from INDOT saying, well, this week, and it might be next week now, but we were hoping to have INDOT have the 22 to 26 statewide transportation improvement program fully adopted, so we don't have to work under our 2020 to 2024 transportation improvement programs like we still currently are. So we've more or less completed that from our end already, and metropolitan planning area and urban area boundaries later in the year will get updates and work with the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, and NDOT to perhaps review and change our planning area boundaries from results of the 2020 census data. And then moving on, we'll get into our budget. Okay.
The budget is essentially the same as what it was last year. It's just a reallocation of resources among different tasks. As we previously said, I think our bump this year, we were expecting a considerable bump in funding for planning activities from Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration. That was not forthcoming because Congress had not approved a spending bill. So therefore, our increase was only $2,000 over the last year, over the current year, I should say. And then starting on page 10, what it does is that it identifies what the cost is in terms of the MPO staff. Ryan and I are the full-time staff. We have minimal involvement with other staff, but they are in there. Bloomington Transit, we have $37,000 identified for fiscal year 23. Of that $37,000, $33,000 would be for a strategic plan, a reallocation of our own resources for a strategic plan, given the new normal for Bloomington Transit. Consultants and supplies, you can see there what that is. That amounts to only $17,000 in the current year. CSA is contract service agreements. These are our agreements for data collection with Town of Ellisville for traffic counting, and also what I would call short-range planning and management systems with Monroe County Highway Department and also with City of Bloomington Public Works. Then on page 11, this breaks it out into what I would call objects. The object class shows you what we're spending in terms of direct salaries, fringe expenses, indirect expenses, and then also for Bloomington Transit, consultant supplies again, and then the contract service agreements. On page 12, we have here the amounts that we're spending by task. You can see the bulk of our work here is in administration and public participation, as it always is. Data collection and analysis. This includes traffic counting data and also the crash data and the analysis of that. Short-range planning system management. That's self-explanatory about managing the entire system, and that also includes the Transportation Improvement Program. Long-range planning, you can see it's a $32,000 level this year for the projected for the new fiscal year. We will bump that up somewhat to $58,000 in fiscal year 24, simply because we'll have census data at that time, and we'll be doing a lot of coordination work with the Census Bureau on defining the urban area boundaries, which is only done once every 10 years. Transit and active transportation, that includes bicycle pedestrian transportation and also coordination with Bloomington Transit, and Bloomington Transit's strategic plan is included in that $37,000. And then other planning initiatives and special projects includes Title VI review for all of the agencies that we work with. And then page 13 is still ongoing. We don't know what the balances are at the current time. It's still preliminary. We're only 2 quarters into the calendar year, into the fiscal year right now. We will have that filled in next time when we come to you in a final format. Contract service agreements on page 14 show you our contract service agreements, which we have with City of Bloomington Public Works, $8,800, the same amount we've had for year after year. We wanted to bump that up, but since we didn't receive additional funding, we couldn't do that. Same goes for Monroe County, $8,800 in federal funds, and again, we wanted to bump that up, but we couldn't because we didn't receive additional funding. Town of Ellettsville, $2,400 there. This is mainly for traffic counting more than anything else. They haven't been billing us for what I would call asset management, just traffic counting. And that was to include the acquisition of traffic counters in the current year, and I think this would account for 2 traffic counters acquisitions next year. And that's all I've got in the way of the budget, unless anybody has any questions on the detailed plan itself.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Are there questions on the Unified Planning Work Program, AKA the MPO budget? Ms. Wiltz.
Yeah, thanks. I always enjoy looking through this. I have a question about looking back instead of forward. Do you provide the actuals against the previous budgets to us at all?
We've never done that before, but we can, if you'd like to see it.
I think it would be helpful in kind of understanding a little bit more detail.
We would have to do that for fiscal year, what are we in now? We're in 22 now. I'd have to do it for fiscal year 21 because 22 is ongoing, and we won't have the finals on that until July. Would you want to see 21?
Yeah, I mean, whichever year it is, if it could list the budgeted and the actual so that there's that comparison. If 21's easier, we can just give me a ballpark idea. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Since we adopt budgets biennially, it seems like maybe going back to the prior 2, if that's possible?
2020 and 2021?
That's right, since you referred to them in that way, that might also be useful, I think. So is that something that can be, I mean, if this is a draft document, can that be easily updated?
Well, we're not required to include this.
Oh, so what's in here is required by...
This would be for you. This would be for you as the policy committee only. It wouldn't be for the Department of Transportation.
So you wouldn't include it in this document, but you could add it as an addendum?
It would be a homework assignment, yes.
Okay. Well, it still sounds like a document worth having, even if it's not integrated into this.
We can do that, yeah. I mean, we had some big ticket items in there in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. I mean, the MTP update and a few other things in there. We run a very tight budget. You know, there's we haven't bought equipment in a long time. There are a lot of things out there that we run very tight on. But yeah, I can do that.
Very good, thank you. Are there further questions on the UPWP draft?
I move adoption of the UPWP.
One second. Can I call on people who are attending remotely? I'm not sure if they have questions. I just wanted to give them the opportunity. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Mr. Martin.
There's no requirement for a vote on this. It's just a draft document.
Oh, all right. Then.
Right. And this is actually out for 30-day public comment period as we speak. And I believe, let's see, that went out a little over a week ago, so we still have about 3.5 weeks left for a public comment, and anybody can get a hold of MPO staff for any sort of comments that they would like to make.
Perhaps you could give us the contact info. Is there an email that people can use to?
It's on the website.
What
yes,
email?
It's on the MPO website, and there's also and that's where all the instructions are of how to make a public comment.
All right, and so then give us just the MPO website URL.
That's correct.
Well, can you? Is it just bloomington.in.gov/MPO, or is it?
That's absolutely correct.
All right, good, very good. Any further comments on this item before we move on to the next one? Ms. Reiterband.
My only comment is that I'm really grateful that finally the rest of the world is recognizing that maybe climate change has an effect on transportation. And so I'm glad that it's finally an emphasis area.
Thank you. Any further comments before we move on to the next item? We'll now go to the fiscal year 2020 to 2024 TIP amendment and the 2022-2026 TIP amendment. Who will be presenting?
I will.
Mr. Clements.
All right, so NDOT has given us an amendment that they would like to include. It's very similar to our amendment regarding ADA sidewalk ramp constructions from last month, which were for State Route 46, 3rd Street, College Mall Road. This one is for construction of the ADA sidewalk ramps on State Route 46 in Bartholomew County and Monroe County. Now, I've never seen a TIP amendment that has been split across multiple MPOs because Columbus is its own MPO. Either way, we have this DES number 210055, and the locations, well, the one location in Monroe County is on 17th Street and State Route 46. And that will be in the amount of $416,000 in fiscal year 2023 using Surface Transportation Block Grant funding. And as in the last project, this one will be relatively the same, where it'll be a better grade, push buttons, just essentially modernizing the pedestrian experience in this roadway. And if Mr. Wallman would like to make any sort of additional responses for this, I'd be happy to let him.
Mr. Wallman?
Yeah, Ryan, I think you covered most of it. We are just modernizing and updating this pedestrian crossing at 17th and the bypass. Happy to take any questions.
Does that conclude the presentation? All right, are there questions from members? I see Member Ryderband. Sorry.
Always. So I'm assuming that the 416,000 is for all three projects and not simply the one here in our county. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe it's for, there's two locations, and so one's in Columbus and the other one is in Bloomington, and that's for both projects. Correct.
Thank you.
It looks like there are three locations, two in Columbus and one in Bloomington, or are those two intersections so close to each other that they're...
You're correct, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Further questions on this item from members of the Policy Committee? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Are there members of the public who would like to comment on this amendment to the TIP? I see no one in the room ready to speak. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to address this issue? You can choose the raise hand function or type into the chat. Second call for public comment on this item. Mr. Clements, are there any?
Don't we generally do that after we have a motion on the table?
I'm sorry, I thought we had a motion. You're right. If you would like to make that
I
motion.
will move to approve the TIP amendment for 2022 to 2026.
DES number 2001522. Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Now we'll go back to public comment, having stalled a little bit to allow people to get up to the podium, virtual or real. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this amendment? Last call. All right, seeing no public comment, we'll come back to the committee for discussion or a motion. Is there any discussion on this item? Any final comment, debate? Seeing none, Mr. Seabour.
I'll just make a general comment that appreciate NDOT's investment in pedestrian infrastructure and accessibility in our MPO area.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I would simply concur with Mr. Seabour and ask for a roll call vote on this amendment.
All right. Kinsey.
Yes.
Bannock. Yes. Nickel. Yes. Clements.
Yes.
Wiltz.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes.
Seabour.
Yes.
Volan.
Yes.
Wallman.
Yes.
Reiterband.
Yes.
Samples.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Thank you. That is 12-0.
Very good, and thank you. That is approved. We'll move now to public comment on matters not included on the agenda, limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Is there anyone present in the room or on Zoom who would like to comment on an item that was not on today's agenda? First call for public comment. Please use the raise hand function in Zoom or type into the chat if you were attending virtually. Second call for public comment. Final call for public comment. I do see a little red chat bubble there, but I'm not sure if that's, can you tell us if the chat has any, I don't have the access to the Zoom chat here.
Nope, that looks just like members.
Okay, very good. Well, if there's no public comment, we'll move on to communications from committee members on matters not included on the agenda. Are there any communications members? Ms. Reiterband, please go ahead.
Gosh, I seem to have the whole floor here. So several things. One is I'm curious to know whether there has been any update in the STIP situation.
You're directing this question to staff?
Yes.
Yes, to the best of our knowledge, they were to make the submission. Indiana Department of Transportation Central Office staff was to make the submission to Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration today.
Thank you.
At least that was the target. And then the review period could take anywhere from 1 week to 4 weeks. All I can say is take off your watch.
Okay, so maybe at our next meeting we'll learn that the STIP has finally gone through. That'd be great. Second is at the last meeting, I believe that Commissioner Thomas had asked for our bylaw revisions to have been redlined and sent to us so we would know in the last amended bylaws what had been changed. And we would be able to see that as we once again look at our bylaws. I would request that that happen. And third, can you give us an update at all on the freight situation and whether we have a committee looking at freight issues in our MPO area as we created, I guess we talked about it a year and a half ago now. So I'm hoping that maybe we now have a committee that's looking at freight and how we move freight through here.
Does staff have a response to Ms. Reiterband?
Okay, we're debating on who answers what.
Okay.
Okay, I'll answer the freight question. Yeah, the staff's been working on the freight issue behind the scenes, developing an outline. Contact was made with the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, asking an individual assigned to government relations, and instead I was contacted by someone else. I outlined exactly what we needed, and the response was less than responsive in the sense that I have the feeling that nobody really knows what freight is. And so, because I gave a very detailed request of expertise, chamber membership. And then so given that, that was approximately a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Given that, what I'm doing is I'm reaching out on my own, reached out to Public Works Director, City of Bloomington Public Works Director, who recommended immediately a number of other people. Reaching out to Monroe County Highway Department, also the same situation. And what we want to do is form a committee that covers a broad cross-section of freight issues, but yet at the same time isn't a committee of everybody. In other words, keep it a working committee is what I want to say. The other issue is Federal Highway Administration is offering a webinar on MPO freight plans because currently the Indianapolis MPO is the only MPO with a freight plan. Of course, they use a consultant. Of course, they have more money than us. And none of the other MPOs have done anything to that matter. But we're well along. We're maybe at what I would call the 10% level of what I would call the 100% goal. And the target still remains this fall, having a plan this fall, if not September, October, for sure. And it will be a higher level plan in that it'll be a Metropolitan Transportation Plan type of thing. It won't necessarily look at commodity flows or tonnage. Instead, it will look at corridors in the county and the city, in the urbanized areas of county and the city, obviously. And it will instead focus on what I would call designated truck routes, which the county has. City code, I know, is 2002, 20 years out of date. I don't know what the county code is for that matter. And then also trying to identify what I would call bottlenecks. Bottlenecks, that's a federal term. I would look at it as more infrastructure needs assessment. In other words, turning radii, pavement markings, signage, what I would call system management operations type of improvements that can be done at low cost, no cost type of situation. We don't anticipate adding truck route lanes to anything along any of our local areas. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I guess I'm wondering if one of the issues is in terms of freight, and I assume that covers a broad swath, whether, again, we see issues, at least within the city, of our freight coming in and blocking narrow roadways, and whether any kinds of issues around all of the major players who come through here with their freight, as well as the fact that we don't have a freight hub here. We don't have a major trucking company within our bounds that is responsible for freight movement, and that may be part of the struggle within the chamber as well as with our MPO staff trying to identify who we're dealing with here. Is that correct?
The research shows that, yeah, we're on the struggle bus, is what I would call it, in terms of identifying terminals, freight operators, break bulk points, liquid bulk versus solid bulk. I'll be reaching out, I sent an email out a couple of days ago to contact the Indiana University Architect's Office about food service deliveries, because food service with the university would be in the tonnage. And then someone else mentioned waste hauling, because the end product, so to speak, of the food service would be whatever the waste hauling is for that too, for that matter.
Downtown would be the alcohol providers, and
we intended to contact beverage distributors too, because I'm sure that's a large business here in town.
We're still planning the route for the struggle bus.
and then the other one was the bylaw revisions and the redlined version of the previous bylaws so that we can see what was changed in the amended one in 2020?
Yes. So when we're through with the UPWP process and the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan, we'll be bringing that to the Policy Committee end of spring, early summer.
So we have to wait till then to see the bylaws with the old redlined version that ended up being amended in 2020? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, you're referring to, the old red line
Well,
from
the amended
Well,
one.
let him answer the question, please.
Yeah,
Oh, from 2.5 years ago, yes, sorry, I misheard. We do have that. I will-
may we please see that? Because what's online is simply the amended bylaws. We can't see what was changed, and we'd like to see that.
Correct. I'll make a note of that and send it out to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas?
Yes, I just want folks to know that there have been a few changes to the process and planning for State Road 4546 modernization efforts by INDOT. They're combining a couple of projects. There are letting dates involved. We have posted the most recent information that we received from INDOT, and with thanks to Mr. Ferris for his assistance. They are on the county's website, co.monroe.in.us. Go to the Highway Department, and about the middle of the page, there's a set of links, and it's the top one. So I encourage folks who are interested in that project to check that out. Thanks.
Thank you. Further communications from members of the committee? I actually have a question I'd like to direct to staff if no one else has anything. Mr. Nickel?
And Ryan, just a thought too for the freight study is the post office might be a good one to contact too as far as, their routes and everything like that.
Yeah, post office is on the list.
Okay, very good.
I mean, Bloomington tends to be what I would call a through route more than a destination route for interstate traffic, interstate and intrastate traffic for that matter. The idea here is to identify not only the post office, but also what I would call major shipper receivers in the area. And that's been the issue up to this point in time.
Thank you. So my question came up with Ms. Reiderbrand's comments. She referred to, or you in your answers to her, you referred to the formation of a committee. Is that a committee of members of this body?
Can be. We can include a member of the committee if you wish, or a couple of members. I mean, the idea here is to form a freight advisory committee. The freight advisory committee would consist of, at most, 9 people. I don't want to get it too large because then we end up committeeing the committee. But the idea is to develop expertise, have expertise of people that are within the business community who are actively engaged in shipping, receiving, transportation of freight, reception of freight, freight generators and all that.
So to be specific, and just for the sake of clarity for me, this body itself is literally a committee, and if it's not a subset of this body, which would be a subcommittee, then you're talking about an additional advisory committee to go with the technical and citizens advisory committees. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're talking about just a special one-time committee on freight.
One time as in ad hoc, and it would be done when it was finished consulting?
For this, yeah, for freight issues, similar to what we did with Metropolitan Transportation Plan several years back when we did the modeling process. When was that? Fiscal year 12 through 16, I think we had an ad hoc advisory committee at that time of what I would call real users that were out there giving us information. But yeah, I mean, the idea was not to form a subcommittee or a permanent committee of any type, but it was an ad hoc temporary committee that would be around just for the study itself. This is the same methodology the state of Indiana uses, same methodology that that Indianapolis MPO used for its freight study too.
Very good. That helps clarify
Yeah.
the matter. I appreciate
Sure.
it. Are there any other communications from members? Mr. Seabour?
Yeah, I guess just building off Commissioner Thomas's comment, I think NDOT is pursuing so they've got a series of projects on 10th Street that are coming in the future, and I think they're really looking at minimizing construction impacts and trying to combine projects, which I think is a good thing. So hopefully that's in the works. And so just on the topic of traffic and studies, just I guess taking a step back and that recognizing that IU Health, prior to the new hospital, completed a significant traffic study back in 2017. And as a result of that study, a lot of improvements, some improvements have already been constructed and more are on the way. From the new signal on the bypass at Discovery Parkway, improvements to Discovery Parkway, and now coming improvements on a series of projects from NDOT on the 10th Street corridor, essentially from bypass ultimately out to Russell Road. So just a lot of things in the works. And then just another little interesting tidbit as it relates to the 3rd Street corridor. As I think everybody knows, in 2020, NDOT implemented some changes to that corridor, and certainly changes that I'd say the city supported. It is a real goal of trying to improve safety along the corridor, and now that that's been in place for some period of time, just an interesting tidbit that I think I've shared with some groups in the past, but overall, total crashes on that corridor since those changes have been implemented are down by a third, and the number of injuries on the corridor are down in half. So just some real strong statistics, real life statistics about the success of that change to improve the 3rd Street corridor's safety and reduction in crashes. So just wanted to share some of those insights and to build off of what Commissioner Thomas said.
Thank you. Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess I'd be curious to see if the 3rd Street reduction in crashes is similar to the reduction elsewhere because of pandemic, reduction in traffic overall. And the other piece that you talked about relating to you noted a traffic study from 2017 done by IU Health. I don't think I've seen that, and I'm wondering if you could forward that to us. I'd be curious to see it, because I'm not sure I was on the MPO then, but I don't remember ever seeing it, and it would be really helpful to have that. Thank you.
Mr. Seabour?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that. And then just generally on the safety metrics on 3rd Street, just that I just generally report that those are very consistent with national research as it relates to what sometimes are called to as road diets, that those numbers and reductions are consistent with what's been seen pre and post-pandemic across the nation, with changes from 4-lane roads to 3-lane roads.
Is that data available in a way that you can demonstrate?
Yeah, I think I could just share a FHWA website or something like that very
That
easily.
we would appreciate that, I think. Ms. Clements?
I just am kind of flummoxed because this is the very type of study we've been asking for very adamantly for a long period of time, because we're making millions of dollars worth of decisions that are interrelated with what you just said exists and we've been asking for. So I find myself quite confused. And the sooner you could send that study to us, that traffic study, I think the better off we'll all be. But thank you very much for finally saying that one exists or something. I don't know. Thank you.
Well, it seems a bit of a surprise to everyone. I'm not sure that it would have occurred to anybody to ask IU Health.
We have asked. We've asked for IU Health to come and make a presentation to us, to share with us their plan so that we could coordinate across the bodies, across the community, et cetera. That's been the point.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is I'm not surprised that perhaps it didn't occur to them to share a study they already did, because you were asking for plans that they were going to do.
No.
But I'd be curious to see if there was a study as well.
Yeah, but that isn't exactly accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Further communications from members? Final call?
I specifically We asked for IU to provide
Yeah,
their study.
well, I think we're all planning to pursue that. It'd be very interesting to see. From that, we're going to move on to topic suggestions for future agendas. It sounds to me like the IU Health hospital study would be a topic that would be worth us exploring. Are there any other items that members would like to see added to future agendas? And not that this is an obligation to set the agenda for next month, just Commissioner Thomas.
To get a reminder about when we're supposed to be talking about the bylaws, because we were going to look at them and make suggestions. Was that April or May when we were going to hear that again? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, I think you're referring to the public participation plan.
Yeah.
Which a red line
Sorry.
version of that will also be provided in a future packet.
Okay, thank you.
And we did mention that that would be in May, yeah, based on the committee vote.
Just incredible.
Okay, any other items for suggestions for future agendas? Seeing none, let's review upcoming meetings. Should I do this, or would staff like to do it?
Oh, you can go right ahead, Steve.
Well, I will then. The next meeting of the Technical Advisory Committee is March 23rd at 10 a.m. This will be a hybrid meeting, as today's Policy Committee meeting is. The next meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee will be the same day at 6:30 p.m., also a hybrid meeting. And finally, we will again be meeting in hybrid form. And I think actually we're going to be meeting in hybrid form pretty much from now on, unless we go fully virtual for any reason. The Policy Committee will be meeting April 8th at 1:30 p.m. in this room and on Zoom. With that, unless there's any other objection, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We have motion to second. If there's no objections, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.